Welcome to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person.
Dan, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it differently?
You mean collecting or everything?
Well, thank you for asking about that, Dan, because I was just wondering if you would just jump into an answer without any direct clarification. So, no, Dan, actually, what I'm talking about specifically today, and the question is this concept of over the years, you've opened a lot of sealed material. And you've been fortunate to get a lot of that sealed material from and through lures working for Pokemon. And in addition, you've bought things from the local game store and things like that. But you've then used the opening of material as a catalyst to try to build sets, etc. And I wondered if you had to do it all over again, would you maybe say, instead of doing that, I might sell the sealed material because I know the pull rates weren't as great as possible, and I could have used that money to buy complete sets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's really my question here to start out the video today.
I don't think so, because even though financially it would have been better to do it that way, and in terms of having sets more complete, it would have been better doing it that way, it would have taken a lot of the fun out of it for me. And I think that if I didn't really enjoy what I was doing, there were definitely times where if I wasn't enjoying it, I think I would have just dropped out of card collecting completely. So I think that opening the product was a good trade-off of not being the best way to do it financially, but giving myself that extra enjoyment. I mean, this is, as we always say, this is a hobby first. This is something you should be enjoying. If you're just in it for the money and just in it for the investment and you're not actually enjoying it, then you should find something else to do.
So Dan, that's a great answer. That is what I've always loved about you is you are comprehensive and you are thorough and you are thoughtful. So I wondered which way you would go with that answer, and you actually went both directions, which is financial and the enjoyment of the hobby as well. But let me just ask you just a follow up quickly. So I guess it was the case, and unfortunately, I just haven't been around a computer enough the last week or two. But you did a video apparently on prismatic evolutions, the super premium collections, when
Yeah.
you got completely ridiculed for opening so many of them that people hated you. You're now a vile member of the community. But it seems to me from some of the comments I read on the video that you may not have had tremendous luck in the pulls that you, got from those boxes. So how does that fit? Do you? I obviously understand, and you understand it's gambling and that's the fun of the hobby, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get one of those and you open a bunch of stuff, and maybe this wasn't the case, but if it was the case that you didn't get very much for that minute in time, does that twinge of like, God, why did I do this? Gosh, I wish I hadn't done this. Does that still kind of eat away at your soul for just a little bit?
I mean, for a minute or two, yeah, it does go, oh, I shouldn't have done this. The funny thing was with those prismatic boxes, so I only hit one SIR, one special illustration rare out of all 60 packs, which is not great for pull rates, but the thing that just made it so much worse for me, it wasn't like it was the cheapest SIR, but there's something like 30 to 35 SIRs in the set, I think. From what we've opened, Law, we build Law's set first. Law only has 7 of the 35. I only have 1 of the 35. There was one of those 7 that we pulled 2 copies of. The one that I pulled in that video was a third copy of the only one I already had. That's why. So it's about mid-range in terms of value. So I think it's worth about $100. The cheapest SIRs from the set, I think, are as low as maybe about 40, 45. Obviously, the most expensive ones are multiple hundreds, and then the Umbreon is like 1,500. But it was like a mid-table one, but it was the fact that it was the one I already had felt like it was mocking me a bit. But even though in the moment it's gutting when that happens, I benefit from the fact that I've been doing this a long time and that I'm going to continue doing it for the enjoyment and for making the video content because it averages out. If you're someone who only jumps in on, say, prismatic evolutions, it can happen that you can have terrible pulls through all of prismatic evolutions and it'll suck for you and you'll hate it. You could also be someone who jumps in with only prismatic evolutions and has incredible pulls. But if you're opening just a ton of product over what now for me has been 15, 17 years of opening product and will continue to be however long into the future, it's going to average out. There are going to be some sets where I have terrible pulls and I need to buy a load of singles at the end of it and I didn't get any of the big stuff. There's going to be sets where I spike all of the big stuff straight away, maybe even get extras of the big stuff, can just trade into finishing the sets and the sets are done. It's going to average out. So if you're someone who's actually dedicated to collecting and just enjoys Pokemon, rather than jumping in and only caring about one certain special set, it's going to be fine, because over the whole course of opening Pokemon, it's going to average out. You're going to get good days, you're going to get bad days.
Yeah, that's a good attitude. I mean, I think it's the proper attitude. It's like saying you should not go to the casino if you are looking to win money, right? You should go to the casino with what you have to spend to enjoy your budget there.
Right.
And if you win, that's a great thing. But if you lose, that's kind of the more expected situation. So you're at least grounded in reality when it comes to all that stuff. The nice part about a second and third copy of whatever you've opened is, at least in this hobby, it continues to hold value. So if that you need at some point to trade it, you've got $100 worth of value to somebody else's 2 or 3 or 1 SIR or whatever that you're going to need in some other fashion. So that's the good thing. And I think enough people are building sets the exact same way. If they are building sets, I'm not saying they are, but if those that are building sets are probably not doing it like I do it, which is try to buy a complete set, especially because I think it's potentially a little more expensive, right off the get-go when you pay bulk sum. And so, that's all makes sense. When you come to the house at some point, if you're ever invited here again, I'd like you to be invited. I'm just not so sure, because of, past things, and some things have been missing, Dan, and I don't want to talk about it on camera, but
end of June, by the way.
Again, okay, no, because that's all. I just leave it at that. If you do come, please bring me all the extra Prismatic Evolutions and Journey Togethers and Destined Rivals by the time you get here, because I've got a good friend who's helping me, maybe try to construct those sets on my own. And so I've got some extras, and maybe we'll do some trading or looking at what we have or whatever. So just something to think about when you eventually do come here, were you again to be invited.
Well, anything I have left after the card shows, I'll bring. I know Destined Rivals, you will still need to have bought a set. Hopefully a set has come up for sale before I come out for Destined Rivals, so that you have that set by the time I get there.
Well, and I appreciate that. The thing is, Pokemon Wonder, my friend Justin is helping to basically see if he can kind of give me baseline sets on some of this stuff, just as a way. So kind of the extras that he opens, the Master Balls and Pokeballs and whatever the heck that was out there, the basic cards, and then seeing that it may be something that gets me started to trying to do some of these things on my own. So, again, if you don't sell anything at the card shows or whatever, you have extras, definitely bring them, and I could try to fill in those blanks along the timeline. So,
well, I know at least your Prismatic set is done. I know you have that.
Yes, but we're not allowed to talk about that. That's a secret, and that one's not to be able to be shared with the public. So please don't put that on the video, and if you do, edit it out. Dan, speaking of card shows, my understanding is you posted on your Instagram page this, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm sick because you guys know I'm sick 50% of the time. It's just a wonderful way to live life. So Dan said, though, David, you must videotape. It's a part of our contract. I said, Dan, I'm heavily medicated. He said, yeah, I can't go worse than the normal videos. He was right. So I had to videotape. So I saw a picture, Dan, today where you had this room, this incredibly hoarder looking room in your house, completely disorganized. And you put a post with all this vivacious pride in your heart. Like, look what I'm doing, guys. I'm organizing my incessant mess. So Dan, what are we doing? Are we going to a card show soon? What is the plan of attack? Because I'd like to be able to advise you on how to best market your wares and come out with the best bang for your buck at the upcoming card show.
Yeah, so I have card show this Saturday. So I'll tell people now, this is going to be the last Coffee Talks until at least Sunday. If we don't get to record Saturday night, I'll make sure there is a video out on the channel on Sunday. But the next few days, I just need to finish prepping for the card show. What I'm doing right now is I'm sorting all of my promos and variants, because the last few months, really, as we picked stuff up, they've just gone in boxes to be sorted later. But now that we're going to a card show, I want to know, first off, what extras do we have so they can be taken to be sold? and also what do we still need in case I see them, because I will do a wander of the show, let Law watch the store for a bit. I'll go and look at other stores and maybe buy some stuff, so I want to know what we need. So what decision I've made today is for the Scarlet Violet era, because that's obviously what I'm working on, that's where most of the new stuff that I've got is from. Instead of having my variants in the binder with the individual set, which is how I would normally like to do it, I'm doing kind of era-specific variant binders. So I've got a binder that's going to be my variants from Scarlet Violet, then my variants from Paldea, then my variants from Obsidian Flames, and then my regular binders are currently just having the full set, the cards from packs. The reason for that is just because it's going to be easier for me to track them then, and if I find that, I'm missing a few after I sort everything that's there, if I come across more in the next couple of days because I'm sorting more cards out, it's going to be easier just for me to go to those 2 or 3 binders rather than having a dozen binders downstairs from different sets. And then obviously the goal is once a set is complete and I know I have all the variants, it'll move back into its respective set. But that's the big goal at the moment, is to get all of that sorted. You figure out what I need, Law needs what you need. I've got you a couple of binders going of just stuff I'm bringing over. And then from there, it's just going to be a case of then pulling out all of the other boxes of extras and our binder of extras. Law normally does this part, double checking the prices on TCG Player, make sure the prices haven't shifted too drastically since the last card show. We normally have a binder that's like $3 or $4 and up, and then we have a couple of like ETBs, which are dollar cards. Basically, any card that's up to about $2.50 in value, we normally just put in the dollar box because we get a lot of foot traffic from that and a lot of people actually buying that stuff because it lets us go through the volume. And really, a big part of these card shows for us is trying to get rid of volume of cards. Like, I'd rather sell 100 of the cards at $1 each than sell 10 of them at $2.50. Like, even though I get more money per card that way, I'd rather just get more money overall and get a lot of them gone. Because, these random EXs and stuff, not too many people care about them, not too many people are interested in them. A lot of them, it is younger kids especially, will go through the dollar box and pull out a couple of their favorites. And a lot of parents who have their kids at the show, seeing the dollar box, are much more okay with saying, or pull out 1 or 2 from there, from the dollar box, rather than going through the big binders and stuff. So
let me ask you a couple questions. So first of all, I thought you were going a completely different direction with your organizing. I actually thought you were talking about at the show having binders that were the complete sets and then having a separate binder that was the variants. But all of that discussion from the beginning was a way for you and Lord to get set up for the show by putting everything together in the sets that you have right now for yourselves, for me, whatever. And then, so that would allow you to understand those don't want to go to the show. Those should not go to the show.
Right.
And everything above and beyond that is extras that's going to ultimately get transported to the show. Is that correct?
Yeah, because there's a lot of like random variants and stuff where I know over the years, or over at least the last 6 months, we've ended up with more than 3 copies of some, because some variants get... I know there was a couple of like Cosmos foils that I just found recently where it was printed in some product with 2 Cosmos foils, and then they re-released it with a 3rd Cosmos foil, or the 2 of them were in a different product with a 3rd one. So we had to buy that new one to get that one extra one. But we have these extra ones lying around, and again, they'll just go in the dollar box. But it's all about organizing the collection, knowing what is extras, so that we can at that point take them and start getting rid of them.
Okay, and I'm not sure that it's a great strategy. I mean, again, I'd have to really think about it. At my age, you got to put like double the time in of a millennial or whatever the heck you are these days, with the respect to thinking and strategizing. But I understand what you're saying by the bulk. Well, it's 100 of at $1, and I like to get rid of them. But certainly, I think that raising money should ultimately be the biggest goal of going to a show. And so, if it's $2.50 a card and you only have to sell 25 or 50 of those to match the same as you have to do 100 of the others, I don't necessarily think anyone should hold a greater priority. I think they should be priced to sell, which is exactly what you're doing, and then marketed to sell in a way that's saying, okay, well, every card in this box averages a value on TCG Player of $5 and they're $2.50 or less, something like that. So I know what you're saying as far as the clutter, but ultimately I think you're going to have so much clutter, it's not going to make a big difference anyways. And so capital raising should be the number one priority. Towards that end, this is just my opinion, but towards that end, have you ever thought of doing a mystery product? And here's what I mean by that. So you've got the boxes and they can pick out a bunch of stuff, but what about having an envelope full of cards or whatever? And it says, this envelope has $50 worth of cards in TCG Player type of value or whatever people would measure. They might have to ask you what that is. And you're selling it for $25 or something. So let someone get a chance to play the mystery game, but with an assertion by you that you are providing additional value above and beyond what most of your competitors in the show are going to do.
I mean, that would just take a lot more setup time. Like, it would take way longer to do than just putting the binder together with the values. I mean, it's something that if we're caught up on organizing cards for a future show where I don't have to do all of this bit, then maybe we could look into it. But for this one, we absolutely don't have the time to do that.
Yeah, and again, you don't need hundreds of them,
stuff.
but like 10 of them or something, just to get a feel for what people say or don't say, right? They open it, they love it, they buy another one, but you get a chance to say, hey, if you sold 10 of those, it's $250, getting rid of stuff that you don't really want or need, but it's giving somebody a lot more value. So that's just one thought on my part. All right, I have different questions. So the first question I have is, you talked about possibly, you wandering around and looking for other things. Let's say that Lore was sitting at the booth at that moment in time. So this whole topic I'm going to bring up right now is something that everybody is well aware of, which is theft. Theft at shows. It's obviously, it's there. It's a reality. I'm not going to say if it's rampant because I think a lot of it may or may not go unnoticed. But today, in this age where Pokemon is so popular, it's bound to happen occasionally around whatever. So is Lore as in tune with you as the realities of understanding and expecting that people are going to be coming up to that table and wanting to steal stuff from you, and truly being meticulously aware of it?
Yeah, and all of the expensive stuff is in like a sliding case, so you can only, it's a cabinet that you can only access from the back, so there's no way for anyone to get into that cabinet without anyone noticing. And I only go and do the wander around the shows if it's quiet. I'll either go first thing in the morning if there aren't that many people about, or I'll go later on in the afternoon once everyone's started to leave. I'm never going to just leave Lore there when it's getting busy, so making sure Lore is capable of looking it over. And I think our friend James might actually be coming to this show because he's selling some Surging Sparks boxes, and I think Lore said he was going to help out with the booth to have a little bit of table space, so he's there to help out this time as well.
And you don't have any cards on the ground behind the booth, any extra boxes that somebody can distract and ultimately, kind of one person's on one end and someone's on the other and they just grab a box of cards because that was your resupply box for something that didn't ultimately get on the table.
Well, the way it's set up is you have your table, and then either behind you is another vendor, like with their back to you, or there's a wall. And like, if it's not the ones up against the wall, it's like a full enclosed rectangle of tables, so only the vendors can like squeeze in and out. Otherwise, people would notice if someone not a vendor was squeezing in and out of there. So there is some stuff that's behind us, but it backs onto another vendor. Like, we'll have our shelves set up behind us, they'll set their shelves up behind that, so our shelves will go back to back.
And the last question before I talk about something else is with respect to the binders themselves. So clearly there are these kids and people that are very astute at being able to manipulate cards in binders so that some go under their hand, some go under their phone while this is being looked at, et cetera, et cetera. Do you just say to your mind, hey, it's only a $2.50 binder, so if they steal 10 of them, I'm out $25? Or do you actually still feel like you need to keep an eye on things, or, because you just know that inevitably this is a possibility of what can happen at these shows?
We still keep an eye on things. The table, we only have like 2 regular sized tables. We don't have a huge thing like a lot of vendors do. We don't have like the corner booth that some vendors do where, in your periphery, like someone's back there. We just have the tables in front of us, so we can keep a good eye on everything. We would notice if someone was taking stuff out of the binder. We would always be aware of that. I mean, the $1 box of cards, probably, yeah, if someone wanted to, when it was a bit busier, they could probably make off with a couple of $1 cards.
Right.
But
Yeah, but at
like
least they're only a dollar and stuff. So yeah.
at that point, you get to a point where how much protection is just stopping people being interested. That dollar box gets most of its sales because it's right out there at the front. Anyone can easily grab it and start looking through stuff. If
Yeah.
we restrict access to the dollar box, we're losing out on more sales than we'd be losing if someone steals a couple. Like, I think
Yeah,
it's,
that
and
makes sense.
I will say, I think that a lot of the thefts at shows are either vintage cards or sealed product, which we have basically none of a lot of the time. That's what I see people stealing, is they'll steal like ETBs or sets of the mini tins, or they'll try and find like a good vintage card from a binder. So I think we're not the prime targets for what people are actually wanting to steal. Like we have the sleeves, we have the world's merch, all that kind of stuff. But we are vigilant about it.
Dan, I want to talk about POV, point of view, I guess it is, or whatever,
Yeah.
podcasting. So there is obviously a tremendous number of these folks that go to shows that do this now. And they put up a camera. And I think part of it is just to try to eliminate theft. So they have a camera rolling throughout the show. But the other thing, the reason they do it is because they're trying to gain views. And with that being what you do, in trying to grow this channel, what why are you not doing that? What would it take to do that? How much technology would it take to put a camera on a tripod or whatever and just let it roll, so you'd be able to edit some of the interaction with the audience and the fans, etc., in hopes of making a video that might garner you 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 views?
I think the only tech stuff that I'd actually have to buy would be, one thing I do need to buy anyway is I need to buy a special battery adapter for the camera so that it can be plugged in and charging while recording. Currently, I
Okay.
have to charge the batteries manually. And then I'd also need to get some wireless microphones for at least myself and Law. That would be the only tech that I'd need to get. I think I have a tripod that fits this camera. But other than that, it would then just be a bigger situation of, it's more bulky, it's more stuff that's around me. Generally, the people I see who are doing that are the people who have these bigger booths, so they have the corner booths. So the corner booths are actually really good for the vendor POVs because you can aim it into the corner and you see a good angle of both shots. Like, a lot of people do that when they're doing those. So it would be more work more than it would be the actual need to buy technology. So because we've been out of the last few card shows, and because I don't know if I'm doing any card shows after this one, it's not something where I've looked into it to do it. If I knew I was going to be doing every card show and I knew that I was going to be hitting them regular, even if I was just hitting the one that's here every 3 months, if I knew I was going to do it every time, I'd invest in the stuff. But because I don't know the future of it, also the one that we go to has a much higher rate of younger collectors coming in. There's a lot more children there, and I know on YouTube there are a lot of rules about like having to blur out kids' faces if they're in any kind of shot. Otherwise, you can't monetize videos that have like children in them without like signed consent forms or something like that. There's a lot of extra rules, so it would be a lot of blurring people out. Like, I know a lot of the vendors that do it at things like collector cons and stuff where there's a much bigger adult audience and way fewer children, so they don't have that issue. I think some of them who do like the Instagram reels of vendor POV, I don't think Instagram has those same rules that YouTube does, because monetization is different on Instagram to YouTube. So there would be that issue with it, but the main thing is just because I don't know what my future is going to be with doing card shows.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can only go by what you've said because I'm not sitting there looking at your bank accounts or your tax forms. But it seems to me that you've had success at these card shows, relatively speaking, as far as raising capital. So I don't really see why you wouldn't do it, in the sense that it keeps you active and in the hobby and seeing what's going on. And if you're able to make a little bit of money, it's a little bit of effort, but once you get it streamlined, that would be a good thing. it makes me wonder as far as the screening out of people's faces. If there's a particular software that's another program that you can use that automatically like uses AI to search for people's faces, where you don't have to do the manual labor, and it just automatically takes them all out so that you can show or not show, and you can always bring them back or something like that. So just a curiosity thing. I wonder if anybody knows out there. Also, if anybody has any thing to say as far as Dan's justifications on why or why not. I love the personal criticisms of Dan. They keep me motivated to keep doing the videos and podcasts with him. So make sure to comment on the videos. You know who you are. You know you won't. You know you will. And the people that we know will, we hope you will continue to comment like you always do. Okay, so Dan, what is the most expensive item you're going to take to this card show?
Most expensive item? I don't know for definite yet. I've got a few sealed worlds packs, so I have some of the the player packs from a couple of years. I have a couple of extras of those from. They're all recent ones, they're not the older ones, but there's some of those. I think we have some staff promos. There's maybe some extra world staff promos there. Those are probably going to be it. I think that a lot of the other bigger items, I think we did move at one point, so a lot of the Japanese stuff, like the show we did about 6 months ago, we offloaded all of our Japanese duplicates when me and Law went down to, sharing a Japanese collection. So we got rid of a lot of those there. So, but that's one of the things.
What about World's merch, like skateboards and things like that?
Don't have any skateboards.
Okay.
World's merch, the most expensive thing we have is we have a staff playmat from London. So it's the Roserade playmat with the word staff on it. So it's different from any of the ones that the players got. I think that's the most expensive bit of World's merch we've got there. But that's one of those ones where that's traveled with us to a lot of shows now, because I mean we picked it up in Yokohama. Like, Law got one for being staff in London, then we ended up with an extra one from Yokohama. But that's one of those items that I think if it doesn't sell at this show, it's going on Verbank or Instagram, just because playmats and stuff like that, they look cool, but they do take up quite a lot of table space. And you have to worry about something like that where it's a playmat that's laid out. You have to worry about people touching it, too many people touching it like that. It's one of those things where we just want to get rid of some of that stuff. But one of the things with the shows is, you said we've made good money in the past. It is just super swingy. So it's going to just depend on where we're at, really. Because the tables, I think they're about $40 a table. So we're $80 into it just for the table. I think at this one, even vendors now have to pay parking, maybe. But like the lowest we've made at a show once was, I think, like $300. And like for a full day, like me and Law doing a full, like packing, the car gets packed up mainly the night before. The last few things go in on the morning, but we're out the house at 7:30, 8 o'clock at the latest to get there and set up. We're leaving the card show at 6 p.m, so we're not back till 7 p.m. So we're out, it's a full, at minimum, 10, 11-hour day for two of us. So even if we count any sales as profit, because usually they're just extras, if you take off what we're paying for the tables, the worst day is like $220, which for two people doing a 11-hour day is not a lot. Like, I could post some stuff on Verbank and make that in 20 minutes if I just ship the stuff, so it's going to depend on...
Yes, if you had the right price, for sure. So
yeah. But I mean, I think we have a good price at a lot of these shows, and we do take offers on stuff. I do a little bit of trading in, especially what works out really well for people is if people bring me stuff that, I actively want for mine in Law's collection, I'm going to give a much better trade-in price than any of the other stalls, because most of the other stalls are businesses. So their trade-in price is going to be like absolute maximum 70-75%. But if you bring me a card that I really want and I want it for me, I'll give you like 100% of value in trade for it. Because it's for me. It's like I would be buying that card anyway. Right. So that's the good thing. Like I've definitely said as well to people at times, bring me prize pack stuff if you want, because the majority of vendors there, well, I guess not a majority anymore because it's got bigger, but a lot of the vendors there can't buy prize pack cards from you. technically they could buy them, they just then can't sell them, because if they're affiliated with stores that run leagues, they're not allowed to sell prize pack cards. I think they can sell Series 1 prize pack cards now, but that's it. I don't even think Series 2 has hit the threshold yet. So there's me and there's a couple of other people who take prize pack cards in a decent amount because of the fact that we're the only ones who can sell them. Or
It doesn't make any sense when you put it the way you did and breaking it all down. If you do have a bad show, hopefully you won't. But obviously, from your per hour workload, it's not very profitable and very time worthy. So for those that are watching, one of the things that I do, I'm a little more strategic than Dan, and I don't like to toot my own horn unless the horn is fully shined up and ready to be tooted. At which time there's no reason not to toot my own horn. Not that I own a horn. Sometimes I just rent one to toot. Well, I'm off on a tangent right now. So what I do, guys, is I live in a court, okay? And so what I do is I put out signs like you would normally see, garage sale signs, that kind of thing, all over the nearby roads. And I have what it looks akin to a lemonade stand out in front of my driveway. And in that stand, instead of saying a lemonade, it says Pokemon cards, not for drinking purposes, because it's meant to be funny, like lemonade. And then I just put out anything and everything. Everything I sell, it could be a $400 card, a $300 card, $200 card. It's like $250 for each card. And then people just come by and they just swoop the stuff up. I don't have table fees. I don't have much labor. I just kind of lay it out on the table. And I do have a security guard there. It's a concealed carry kind of gun thing just to make sure things are safe for me, not the people buying from me. And it's done very well over the course of time. So it's just something to think about, Dan. I don't know your situation. I haven't been to your home in Columbus, Ohio. I don't know if I've actually been invited to your home before. I'm not sure the dogs would welcome me at your home. Laura doesn't even welcome me at my home when she comes here with you. So, but it's something to think about, Dan. Maybe another way of doing business, what I call the lemonade stand model.
I mean, as I said, we're getting this card show out the way. We're seeing how this one goes. Any decisions on future selling and stuff is going to happen after this card show's out the way.
Dan, that makes complete sense. I started the podcast by asking you a real quick question. I'm going to ask again. Dan, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it differently?
For card show stuff and collection stuff? Because if first you asked about the openings of products and building sets that way, but for collecting the way we do, I would get on top of tracking what I had quicker. I wouldn't let it build up to the point where I now have 2,000 cards I need to organize in one go. I would get a lot more on top of sorting things as and when they come in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess it does. I didn't really have any parameters around the question as I asked it a second time. It could have been just something like, would you have been a, long distance track runner instead of, not being athletic because your lungs didn't work? You know what I mean? You could have taken you could have taken that any different way you wanted. But that has sparked one last question. Will you ever complete your prismatic evolution set? Now, really think about that before you just say, of course I will. You guys have two sets because we haven't been able to consolidate due to marital difficulties and therapeutic situations that don't allow you to come to any kind of agreement. Dan, most marriages, you can't even go to bed together unless you've got over the anger. So you deal with that stuff. But Dan, you're missing 1,000 SIRs between the two sets, and each one is hundreds and hundreds of dollars. What is that? Are you going to finish that set?
It's very heavily going to depend, I think, on how well we do when the last product comes out. I say Law has the Umbreon. So the Umbreon is 3 times as expensive as the second most expensive card in the set. Yeah. So Law has the Umbreon. If we spike a God pack when we're opening this last figure collection or whatever it is that's coming out in 2 months, it's a lot more realistic. If at some point down the line, I mean, maybe at the show, someone comes to me and says, oh, I have a lot of these SIRs from Prismatic. I want your world stuff. Maybe I can make a good trade. That's always an option. If we get to make trades, then yeah, maybe. I think in terms of just if we had to go out and buy everything that we're missing, it would be one of the last sets that gets finished, just because of how much we're missing and how expensive it is. I think there are many, many other sets we would finish before we attempted the mountain of that set is.
That makes financial sense. I mean, I guess my follow-up then to that question is, do you feel you are sufficiently religious, either you or Laura or as a couple, to be deserving of pulling a God pack?
I am not religious at all.
Okay. So yeah, it looks like Prismatic won't get finished by you. All right, Dan, I have nothing more to say. I'm open to whatever you have to say.
The term God pack in TCGs, I'm sure sports cards used it earlier, but the earliest instance I know of a TCG using the term God pack in official marketing was Magic the Gathering in the set Journey into Nyx. It was at the end of the Theros block, and in Theros, Born of the Gods, and Journey into Nyx, each of the 3 sets had 5 mythic rares that were gods, because it was set on a plane that was themed heavily around Greek mythology, and so there were gods of the pantheon as these mythic rare enchantment creatures, and each set had 5. But in Journey into Nyx, there was an actual special god pack that you could pull, where instead of any commons, uncommons, anything, you pulled 1 each of all 15 gods. So the term god pack, at least as far as I know it in TCGs, I don't believe that, I've never heard of it any earlier than that, is not a religious thing. It is to do with actual Magic cards called gods.
Thank you for clarifying, Dan. I am not religious either, and so now I actually feel hopeful again. Before that, I really thought we were in a heap of trouble. But now, since I really only worship Pikachu and Psyduck at this point, I've never been more hopeful, which is the reason I need to get off the podcast so I don't lose the hope staring into this monitor with you.
Yeah. And if we want to pull a god pack, we can go and pray to Heliod or something rather than any traditional god. All right, well, I think that's it for us for today. I need to go and finish sorting cards. I have a card show to work on. There'll be something on the channel on Sunday, whether it's Coffee Talks or not. Depends on how late I get back Saturday night, whether I just need to sleep on Saturday night. But if not, Coffee Talks should be back Monday. I suppose at the very latest Tuesday, depending on how your weekend goes. Coffee Talks will be back soon. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one, and if you're in the Columbus area, I'll put a flyer up on screen now for the card show, and you can come along to it and say hi. All right. Say goodbye, David.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Coffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, with music by More Than Never and artwork by Lore Norton. A special thanks to all our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to.